So welcome everyone. My name is Sierra Ladroma. I'm the project manager for the Iowa Center's Women's Business Center. The Iowa Center's Women's Business Center is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. It's incredible to be able to bring inspiring entrepreneurs, workshops, and events to the community. All of you would have received an email with a form to complete. Please do so after this event. This information allows us to continue providing free educational programming for small business owners in Iowa. Throughout the webinar, feel free to use the chat option to ask questions or add comments. Today's conversation is a panel with 3 community builders who are also small business owners. Christina Moffatt is the owner of Creme Cupcake and Dessert. She also serves as Director of Small Business Resources at the Greater Des Moines Partnership. Also, Christina is celebrating 8 years of Creme, so congratulations. And if you'd like, you can head down there today, 11 to 5, right? For mimosas and mini cupcakes. Annie Woods is the life coach and creator of the Convos with Lola podcast. Lastly, Whitney Warne is the founder of Ivory House Photography and Brand Launch. All 3 of our panelists are located right here in Des Moines. Ladies, we are so excited and thankful to have you join us today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yay!
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So let's dive right into the first question. And that's, I guess, around building foundation of what community is. So what does community mean to you? And Whitney, we'll start with you.
Oof. Community means family. Community means family on so many levels. And I think the beautiful thing about community is that we are born into them in some ways because we're born into a place. So I'm an Iowan, so I'm born into an Iowan community. But then also as we grow up through life, we build our own communities, we land in communities. And I think the really cool thing about being a business owner and being an adult is that I get to choose my communities and I get to choose to both build them and be a part of ones that already exist. And for me, it's family and that safety net. I often think about like, it's the web I weave underneath me to catch me when I need a little help.
I love that. What about you, Annie? What does community mean to you?
Well, I'll retweet what she said and add that really community for me is belonging, and it took me a while to understand that or to appreciate the belonging piece, because for a long time I think there's communities of circumstances, like Whitney mentioned, communities that we are born into. We don't get to choose those, and those are spaces in which we usually fit in, so we might have to mold ourselves to be a part of those, whereas the communities in which I feel I belong are communities in which I get to be 100% myself. Mm-hmm. So for me, community is a freedom and authenticity, mm-hmm. and that belonging to myself that also allows me to be in a space with others.
That's awesome. We're going to talk about authenticity later. Christina, what about you? What does community mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think both these ladies nailed it on the head. I think the other thing I would add is community to me is someone who supports you, but you support in return. So it's somebody who picks you up, but it's also the one that you turn around and pick up as well. So making sure that you build the right community around you, that you believe in, that you support both ways, I think is very, very important. And then I think we always think of community as where we choose to put those roots down. So it can vary at different points in your life depending on what you need. It just needs to be a two-way relationship.
Agreed.
Thank you. So all of you are small business owners and all of you have social media platforms. What is, and why is it important for a small business owner to have a community, whether it is online or in person or both?
Okay, are people frozen? I don't know. Okay, I can see Christina moving.
Yeah. I can't see the other two moving.
Yeah, so there's you and me for at the moment, Christina. There we go. Ooh, a lot of things happened.
Are we okay?
Yeah, we're all okay.
Are we all right?
We made it. Like I can start by saying that for me, creating, like for me, it was an act of circumstance and survival to have community. So I'm an immigrant. I moved to Iowa directly from my home country 4 years ago. So it was a sink or swim kind of situation. I either got myself out there or went back home because emotionally I was not going to be able to withhold immigration. And then being a part of social media, and I think that it started with me in social media, being a part of a Facebook group. I put myself out there and was like, hey, anybody wants to have some coffee with a stranger? And that is literally how it started for me. And I find so much value in spaces that are created in which people can make requests like that, in which people can offer those things. So it comes back to that belonging and that permission to be yourself, and that's what people feel attracted to. And it eventually, as you nurture your own social media community or your in-person community, that reflects in your business, people feel attracted to that which you've created. So that is like the importance that I found. Not only it's, I would say, saved my mental health, but it's been really fun to see the people that show up at my door for my business. Like, hey, I want coaching because I heard of you through so and so and so people. And it's really, it's humbling when you create a community, to see the effects that your content can have.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
would say both online and in person. I mean, if COVID has shown us anything, is you have to be virtually connected to people just like we are today. So I worked with a lot of small businesses that didn't have online presence, and that was pretty scary for them because then you're trying to build that community, you're building that presence, and you're already kind of behind the gate. So I think that the online piece is huge, especially just like this, you know, even though we're not physically together, and I'm an extrovert, I miss people. I miss people coming. It is good for my mental health to physically be able to see people. And I think the thing is, like, with an online platform, you're able to deliver the different messages to your different communities that we've all talked about being plugged into at different times. But I am such an in-person, I just like to meet people in person, that I've started to pick those up again. I just feel, especially if a lot of the counseling I do with small business right now is not easy things to talk about, and it comes across better, and being able to relay those hard numbers or hard facts or hard message in person, I think is key. I think there's a time and a place for technology, and there's a time and a place for being in person.
So I'm not an immigrant, but I came back to Des Moines 4.5 years ago, and I was also in a sink or swim situation. You know, I grew up here, so I understood Iowa, but I hadn't been living here for almost a decade. So, and I came back specifically to start my business. So there was no safety net. There was no other job. I am a single person, so there's no other income that was going to be coming into my bank account. And I remember the moment when I looked at my bank account, it said $15, like total, like all of it. And I was like, okay, here we go. Because it's either, at that point, it was like, you either go get a job or you go all in. So I went all in, and I spent that first 6 months, I think I had 5 coffees a day. I mean, it was a lot of in-person, one-on-one meeting, because when you're really first entering a community, you know, it's that one-on-one connection, and it's a lot of energy. I'm actually an introvert, which shocks people every time I say that. But when we talk about energy, I get energy from being alone. I love people, but I get my energy from being alone. So yeah, so I know Annie's in that boat too. But I will never regret all of that one-on-one time I put in, because it has given me a foundation that got me through COVID, not just okay, but I feel so supported, and my business grew a lot during that time. I was able to grow and connect because I built my in-person spaces. And a lot of my business that I do now is coaching on how to show up both in person and in social media. So I had built a space for myself that I didn't really have to worry about people wondering where I'd gone because I was there. So it's necessary and it's fun. If you figure out how it works for you, it's really, really fun.
So with these coffees and now those being limited now with COVID, how, I guess with so many people being on social media platforms for their businesses and looking up businesses that they want to be customers of, how do you all feel about people emailing you on your business account or messaging you with a direct message on Instagram or Facebook? Is there a preference? What is the difference when it comes to that kind of interaction?
Because I have personal, I have partnership, I have Crim, I have accounts for all of those. So I have about 9 or 10 different platforms people contact me on. It depends on what they're reaching out for me. So a lot of times, so that I don't lose their message or lose them wanting to schedule something, I will direct them to email me on the correct platform. So if it's something personal, a lot of my friends know to just email me on my, if we're trying to schedule something on my Gmail, so it syncs with my Google Calendar. But if it's the one-on-one counseling, it's usually through the partnership. And if it's crime related, if you want to know more about entrepreneurship or how we do stuff here, I have to keep all those separate. Otherwise, it does get lost in the mixture. I do miss the coffees. I do, Annie said one-on-one is still king for her. It's the same for me. I would prefer to have a one-on-one discussion so that I can sit and focus for that hour. Phone calls just aren't the same. If I can't physically see your eyes and know your expression, it's really hard for me. So I try to do a lot of virtual Zoom so that I'm focused on you. Otherwise, I'm the type that if it's a broad meeting, I will work in the background if it's a conference call. So. Guilty. Whitney, I can tell you're guilty too.
I had to shut down everything before we started. I was like,
oh yeah. Otherwise, I'll be like, my inbox will be clean by the end of this.
Well, I believe that's the kind of panel we have today is people who continue to work even when they're working. And so it's that small business hustle, really. So Whitney, how do you feel about someone sliding into your DMs or Facebook or email?
I love it if it goes within certain boundaries, and like not everybody, when I'm reached out, when I get a cold reach out from somebody who's like, hey, I want to get coffee, and I was like, I don't know you at all, or now it's like Zoom meeting. That's a really hard ask for someone whose every dollar depends on the hours that they're putting in. And so I think it's that acknowledgement, like I have people who have been following me, slipping into my DMs, commenting, engaging, like being a part of my community. And then a year later, they're like, I'd really love to know this X, Y, and Z. Like if you want time on my calendar, I want a direct ask. I want to know why we're hopping on. I want to know that there's like an agenda or there's something, just to specifically get to know me better. That's awesome. I love that. But like, that's a lot of times what my social media presence is for. So it's like, if I'm going to help you elevate or something, like, let me know what that is. Let me know how I can serve you and be a part of my community leading up to that. Like add value to the people in my life that, we're all working together to influence each other.
Great.
Yeah.
Annie, what about you?
I feel very similar to Whitney to the talking about the hard ask. Mm-hmm. I think that it's just a matter of respect to reach out to somebody with first off some knowledge of who they are, acknowledging that, and also it's kind of like, for me it's an honor to be asked for help, right? So it's kind of like, let us facilitate that help by being clear in your ask, and allow me to help you the best way I can, because and that is very interesting, because when somebody reaches out to me with kind of like a vague ask, it tells me that probably what they need is more clarity in what they want, and they are not so sure in why they're reaching out to me for. And in those instances, I would probably take 5 minutes and be like, and ask them, what do you really need, or what is it that this interaction is going to be about? I would honestly say, when somebody reaches out to me via DM to ask me about coaching, it's very easy to just relate, like, hey, here's my email. Just send me an email with your request, or here's a link to schedule your time. But there's nothing that I love more than somebody being like, hey, and it happened a couple of days ago. An immigrant that just came to Des Moines and started coaching reached out to me and was like, hey, do you have any wisdom for me to do X, Y, and Z? And I was like, sure, this is exactly how I did. These are the groups that I joined. These are the people that you can hang out with. This is somebody else that you can talk to. If you need anything else, just send me an email, because I understand what it's like to be there. But that was a very specific ask. It was like, how did you do it? Oh, I know that. That's very easy. So I felt humbled, but there's standards that are in place to make it a quality interaction.
Okay, I get that. So what I'm hearing is, yes, messages are welcome. Reach out, especially now that face-to-face interactions are limited, but make sure that your asks actually come with some sort of action or explanation, and also support back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are so many different types of communities and organizations and groups to be part of here in Des Moines. How do you know when you found the right community? What advice would you give to someone who is on the search for somewhere to belong? Annie, we can start with you if you'd like.
I can kind of hit that a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amy.
No. You were ready.
I would just say, so I give all entrepreneurs this advice because it's really hard to know where to put their time in the beginning. It's very hard. And I think, Whitney, even you and I had this discussion of like, what do I go to? What do I attend? Is that you kind of have to feel everything out in the beginning. It's going to suck, but you will very quickly find out if that is the right place for you to be. Especially if you have nailed down who your customer is. Think of where else your customer shops. What other groups do they attend? What other events do they go to in town? And if your values line up, you get there, the people treat you the way you want to be treated, you don't feel necessarily like an outsider, you feel welcome. If it aligns naturally, that's probably a place to put your time. But unfortunately, in the beginning, starting a business, you're going to bounce around a lot until you land. And that's okay. But I would say bounce around. Don't just dump all your eggs in one basket. So if you decide group A is, I'm just going to go all in, I'm going to go to the same meeting every week, that's going to be hard, because what if you find out 2 months down the road, group A was not a fit for you? Now you've wasted, again, all those dollars like what you was talking about in this group, and they're never going to be the right group for you. So bounce around a little bit, you'll figure it out. If you feel comfortable, if you feel like your customers and your clients and your friends, people that can, again, have that two-way relationship with you, that you want to invest in, they want to invest back in you, then you know you've found a good place. But you've got to bounce around a little bit in the beginning.
I definitely agree with the bouncing around. It's just like exploration. I mean, you're shopping around for a place where your soul feels happy. And I also feel like there needs to be an intentionality and a distinction of the purpose of the interaction. Meaning, there are some groups to which I approach with the purpose of having more peer-to-peer interaction rather than searching for a client, right? So fellow entrepreneurs that I wanted advice from, or I wanted coaching, or I wanted mentorship from, having that intentionality in mind allowed me to, cut through the weeds of maybe this is not the right fit for me. So figuring out what are the things that I need right now and what are the possibilities out there for me in the shape of communities. There are groups in which it's more comfortable for me, or it's it serves me better to put my services out there or my help out there. There are groups in which it serves me better to offer my mentorship or offer my coaching as just part of support. And there are groups in which I go in and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Can somebody that has been through this help me out? And there's value in all of that, but being intentional. And also, I mean, I think that we can all agree that as much as we want somebody to come to us with a hard ask, be ready to ask, right? And I think that I feel the most comfortable in groups that make that a regular practice and encourage people to ask for what they need, whether they can get it within the group or not. Because it's awesome when a group says like, yeah, maybe right now we don't want you to promote your services, but I know where you can do it, so provide you with resources and stuff like that. So those are the groups that I feel the most comfortable in, or communities.
There's a couple things that I really look for when joining a group or community, and the first one is leadership. So who is leading the group? What kind of person are they? Are they connected? Do our values align? Is this someone who's doing the work? Not that I am always best friends with the leaders of groups, but actually like a lot of them that I joined in the beginning of being here, they are my best friends. And so leadership and nonprofits, the nonprofits that I have put time, energy, hours, years into supporting, I chose based on mission, but I would say more than mission, I chose based on leadership. I chose based knowing that when I integrated into their community, they were going to value what I had to bring to the table just as much as I valued how much they were serving our community. So the first one's leadership. And then the next one is, where do I want to invest my time and my dollars? So I'm a part of a lot of communities that, they're my interest. So I'll give the example of my yoga community. So I belong to Adamantine Yoga. I love it. I've been there for 2 years, and I pay every single month to be a part of this community. I love spending that money. I love the leader. James is one of my favorite humans in the whole world. But at the same time, my dedication, showing up there every week, when we were in person, it was every day. Even though I never talked to these people, a lot of the members of that community have become my clients in one way or another. Now, I didn't necessarily show up there and think, no, I did. I did think that. Let's take that back. I knew that that community was filled with dedicated, committed people that valued high quality, because that's what I was paying into every month. And I associate my business with those values. So I was like, okay, and these people are already pre-selected. This is awesome. And I know what they pay to do yoga every month. So I know that my price point, what I value, what I'm doing in the world might appeal to them. And simply by being in close proximity, both in person and online, I have a lot of clients that are from that studio. And now James and I work together, but we didn't work together right away. It took a year. And then now I do work with him. And I'm like, this is so cool, because I wanted to do that anyway. But I showed up for a year and then it just happened. But it didn't just happen.
So a lot of people wonder, so people just say, just get out there, go meet people, network. But it still comes down to the how factor, or how to even find those communities. So with the three of you being so involved in numerous communities, what are some suggestions that you have in regards to where to start? So maybe 1 or 2 communities that you're part of that you would recommend to everyone listening today.
Okay, well, the community where I met this ladies, Fem City Des Moines, was basically my gateway into networking. Like, if there were gateway drugs, that's where it started.
The network gateway.
Yeah. So, and again, it's all about, for me, it was really about leadership and about the mission of the organization and showing up. So I would highly, for female entrepreneurs, how to make that caveat, don't know who's watching. FemCity is a great place. And honestly, without like pinpointing one space, but like piggybacking on what Whitney mentioned, even our like fitness communities or like recreational communities, basically you're in that space for a reason. Whether you go to climb Iowa to climb like Sierra does sometimes, like you're there because it aligns with your values, it aligns with how you see yourself. For me, it's CrossFit. For Whitney, is yoga and CrossFit. So it's kind of like, what brought me to this space, and and how am I showing up here, which it's again the conversation on authenticity, that you can build off of, right? I have clients in my CrossFit community, and it is, like Whitney said, not something that I didn't show up with flyers. A lot of people didn't. Like I've been part of that community for 3 years, and a lot of people didn't know what I did for a living for 2 of those years. Because that wasn't the conversation. The conversation was, what do we have in common and what do we love? And then if the conversation came about like, how can I support you? These are the ways that I can do it. So FemCity for a name, and also like, what are your interests in the communities that you're already a part of, that you could be more intentional about showing up in.
I love that. I mean, I remember FemCity was, again, I met Annie there. I didn't meet Christina there, but just you were such a huge part of when that really got going, Christina being a mentor in that space. But thinking about where to go, I mean, finding a nonprofit that you align with and want to spend some time with. But first realizing how you want to contribute to a nonprofit. So the thing I always say is like, I'm not a board person. I'm not your girl. I'm not organized. I'm not detail oriented. Like these are not my strengths, but I have figured out like, hey, I can organize my own thing to benefit a nonprofit. And I can, so I do like something called $100 headshots, and I do it twice a year. And I lower the price of my headshots. I partner with a nonprofit that I have sought out based on leadership and mission alignment. And then we collaborate on something. So that has led me to know, like the amount of emails I get about questions about the Food Bank of Iowa. I'm like, you guys know I don't work there, right? Like, you know that I don't work there. But the amount of times I get asked about what's happening at the food bank, you would think like I need to send them an invoice. So it's just finding where you want to hang out.
I would say the same thing. FemCity I think is great, and that's one of the groups too for me that I show up more. These ladies can attest. I show up more online than I do in person, because a lot of times the times just don't match up for me to attend. But I'm part of their Facebook group. I post in there often for resources. I check in to see what's going on with the women in the group. I think FemCity is great for me. We talk about aligning with groups that, kind of your core values. For me, it kind of comes down to supporting female, especially female entrepreneurship, but anything female related in general, I want to support, because I've had good people supporting me. Another group that you'll find me in often is I'm very plugged into WineFest, because owning a restaurant, those are my customers if they like fine wine and good food. But it's also my chance to geek out and talk about food, which I love. So I'm very involved in WineFest, and that really helped launch my business. It put me right in front of the right customers who wanted to talk about food, the right people that attend the events. But also, I'm part of 24 chambers. And so I always tell people your chamber is your first open door. Entrepreneurship's their specialty. So just getting plugged into a chamber, just that first step of attending events, that's an easy one, because they have ambassadors that are there to welcome you. So you're not going to walk into an event, just stand in a corner. There's people specifically assigned to welcome you and to get you plugged in. And I think the chamber is a launching pad for so many people to find other things that they want to be involved with.
And I'm almost 100% sure that all those places you could contact and just say, I'd love to have a call. I'd love to have a Zoom. That's what all of that is around anyways. So please look at the chat. It looks like Annie and Whitney have put in some really great information in there regarding FemCity, as well as the LEAP series with the Downtown Chamber. All right, so all of you are incredible community builders, but how do you care for yourselves when it just gets maybe too much, or to make sure that you don't get burnt out in maintaining your communities, whether that's online or maybe a hybrid of online and in person?
Ooh, this is a complicated answer that I have done an incredible amount of work around, and will probably continue to work on this exact topic for the rest of my life. But what I would say is that as far as social media showing up goes, a lot of people will ask, like, what if I take a week off of social media? I'm like, what if you take a week off? Don't. What, like, we don't owe anyone our presence, and if you don't tell anybody, they're not gonna know. Like, that's the honest truth, is when I don't show up for a week at a time, which happens a lot more frequently than people might realize, I just don't say anything about it, and nobody wonders what's going on. So, like, give yourself the breaks you need. There are huge stretches I don't show up in certain spaces, but because I've built consistency, people don't feel that the same way. As far as self-care in general, I have learned, first of all, self-care is not about what you do to take care of yourself. It's how you are being all day long. So when I started my self-care journey being really diligent, I thought about things like chiropractor, massage, going to the gym, eating healthy. These things are all great. They're amazing. But at the end of the day, what I really needed to do was sit my butt down and, like, do nothing in a chair for 20 minutes a day. And that has turned out to be the very, very hardest thing I could do, but also the very, very best thing to do. So if you need a meditation app, just go to Headspace, pay the money. So be self-care and stop paying money to have other people do your self-care. I mean, keep paying money, but, like, know that that's not the whole answer.
Yeah. For me, it's been interesting because when I started and the whole hustle, like, it was constant social media content creation. And then as I think in the past year, so many things have changed, not only with COVID, but for me has been just really getting really honest with myself and asking myself, like, what is the purpose of everything that I'm doing? Like, if I'm going to post every day this week, is there a purpose for it? Am I moving the needle forward towards the life that I want to live, not towards the bottom line of my business? But is showing up in this particular way going to be what's going to get me closer to being my most beautiful imagined self? And self-care, I'm a person of routine. I love routine, and I also love spending time by myself. Currently, I've been developing a meditation practice, but I feel that self-care to me really is an honest conversation about boundaries with myself, setting them and respecting them. And once those are in place, also a conversation about, like, how flexible can I be with myself and with others so that I can preserve the integrity of my peace of mind and the integrity of my relationships. And what I mean by that is, like, well, if I've set a boundary, it's important that I communicate it, right? Because then people won't know that it's there. And if it's crossed, then that's just going to be a larger conversation. And yeah, just self-care is a constant process of communicating and listening to myself and showing up in the way that I need to show up for myself, understanding who I'm doing this for, not who I'm doing this for. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you.
I would say for me, it's been kind of a wake-up lesson to me since COVID, because I've always time blocked. So I've been very good at scheduling chunks of time and allowing my brain to only focus on that. And as you can imagine, COVID threw us completely back into a house and kids, and everything's overlapping and nothing's segregated. So I have not, honestly, I'll fess up, I haven't been very good at time blocking. I'm getting better because things are settling into a new normal. I'm very much like Annie. I like routine. I like to know what's going to happen on this day at this time. So I've been trying to not go back to the normal, but get into a new routine. It really hit me on Sunday. I took my son up to Big Creek, and usually on Sundays I try to kind of glance at things, and so I'm not hit with everything coming at me at the week. And I literally left my phone just sitting on the ground and did not pick it up. And that's really hard for people to do, but it was such a nice day, and I was like, you know what? I need the fresh air. I need to watch his innocence and his smile, and I need to just focus. And I can't tell you how great I felt just after that. Sitting in the shade under a tree, watching my son play, and just observing people with their kids and people enjoying their friends. And that was so rewarding to me versus scrolling on Facebook and seeing everybody's maybe makeshift posts that maybe they captured a happy moment. But it really is putting yourself in timeout, because as these guys have said, like, if you're not good for yourself, you're not good for anyone. And counseling small businesses right now, it's a lot of, I hate to use this word, but it's a lot of secondhand trauma right now, because not only do I live it in a retail space, I counsel a lot of people that are not going to make it. Their personal finances are tied to their business. It's a lot. That I have had breakdowns on Zoom because I'm trying to digest what I just got off of. But every night, literally before I go to bed, I give myself an hour to decompress, to just let my mind wander, to just take in some fresh air, to write if I need to get things out of my head for the next day, write everything out. And honestly, just to drink some water. Like, you don't realize how much water your body needs, and by the end of the day, if your headache's sitting in before you go to bed, but just those timeout moments as an adult are so key. Like, take time, take the 10 minutes to breathe and put yourself in timeout. I call it adult timeout, and I've gotten really good at trying to leave 1 weekend a month and put myself in adult timeout where I can't run to my shop and I don't take my computer.
Mm-hmm.
I love the timeout moments. And Whitney, I love that you really said that if you don't show up for a week, it's fine. No one knows. I'm disconnecting right now for a month. Yeah. And it's kind of odd how often I go and reach for my phone for no reason, because I've logged out of all of my social media platforms. So, but it feels so good. And then Annie, you had mentioned talking about boundaries, but the next question is going to be about, how do you show up on your platforms or do you express your values and what's important to you on your platforms, or is that more of something that you have with your inner circle of friends?
I believe that when it comes to it really depends on your brand. There is a freedom of what you share and what you don't share. Like Whitney said, you don't owe your presence to anyone. But at the end of the day, whatever you share, in my opinion, needs to be authentic. And your values are going to shine. That's the whole thing about integrity and the whole idea of being in alignment with your thoughts, words, and action. I am very vocal about the things I believe in and the things that I stand for. And it's very funny because I have friends that are like, aren't you afraid that there's going to be like trolls coming up into your DMs and all of that? And I'm like, I don't believe it hasn't happened yet, to be honest. But I just feel that there is no ambiguity in the message that I put out there, and arguing with me over like what I stand for would be a serious waste of time on somebody else's part, because it's not like I've presented absolutely anything differently. But I do have hard boundaries with my time and energy, meaning I will not engage in I would say petty argument or he said, she said conversation on social, and probably not even in person, because my time is valuable and my energy is valuable. And I do have like high standards for the conversations I engage with, and it tends to be constructive. It needs to be open, and I am not afraid to be challenged. I've actually, in one of our podcast episodes, and it's not only like because I want to overpower or think that I'm right. In one of our podcast episodes, the Combos with Lola podcast, my co-host and I had a really good friend of ours show up, and we were talking in her space how to be a fat athlete and her experience as a fat athlete. And And we opened up a conversation that was very vulnerable for everyone involved. And it was the spot in which I was called out publicly for a lot of things and biases that I've harbored. But I believe that because I have authentically always been open to learning, it didn't come off as being insulting. Like, she knew, the friend that we were talking to, she knew where I was coming from, and the conversation literally changed my life. So it's important that we opened up our minds to receive feedback, but also stand strong in our values so that we are not swayed by feedback.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of work with business owners on how to show up on social media. So that's one of the things that I've grown into passionately and now do coaching around. And the very first thing we do within those groups is assign our values. We dive into our values. We do an exercise around it. And then we talk about how we take action on those values in our life. And then everything that we do around social media flows from those values. So a lot of times we know our values, or we think we know our values, but when you put pen to paper and you get to be accountable to those values all of the time, you start behaving differently by simply just seeing them. And so I think that how do you show up online in a way that represents yourself well, or authentically, is I don't share everything about my life with people. I don't share a lot about my life with people, but I do share the things that feel really, really important to share, and feel like they're going to align and draw people to me. And so I'm going to have the conversations that I want to have with people. Because if I start a conversation, there's conversations I simply don't want to have. And so I don't ever start those conversations. And I just know that if I start a conversation, I get to be prepared to finish it. So there's a lot of times that I'll give an example of something that I've seen happen. And it's when people share their weight loss journeys, but then don't want to talk about their weight loss journey. I'm like, that's awesome. You're on a journey. Anytime you're on any sort of journey, or a spiritual journey, or a political journey, if you start sharing about a journey, people will want to follow up on your journey. So if you don't want to talk about it, it's just not something you share. If you're like, I need to talk about this, I want support, I want people to be talking about my bod online, that sounds awesome, then yeah, put it out there. Let us support you. And also be prepared that like not everybody supports the same thing. And if they don't, you get to defriend them. It's awesome.
I think for me, I've always been a person of actions speak louder than words. With social, you can post, you can say whatever you want, but if your actions don't align with what you posted, you've just lost all trust with your community, with your friends, all of that. So a lot of times I don't weigh in on things because, especially at the shop, like, come see who works there for me, come see how we do things. I mean, I can post whatever, but until you come see how we actually operate and who we are. And that's what I tell businesses all the time. You can make comments, you can give lip service, but you got to follow through on that. For me, core values is leaving this community better than I found it. I'll say that over and over again. And if you look at my social media, you'll see my son often because I'm trying to build a better community for him. I'm trying to make this place a better place than when I arrived, and making those memories with him, teaching him a valuable lesson on, giving back and sharing. That's who I am. That's to my core of leaving this place better than I found it. And my actions will show that.
I think that we got a question from Q&A from Becky Eastman. Just Sierra,
Yes.
I don't know.
So Becky asks, what professional development resources do you utilize to continue to formally learn and invest in yourself?
Books. I'm a big fan of books. I also believe, especially as a coach, I believe in paying for coaching. Meaning, like, there's just an integrity thing. If I believe that coaching is valuable, I invest in financial coaching or personal development or professional development coaching. and maybe some certifications depending on what I want to learn and what my interests are at the moment. I just think that knowledge does not take up space. And at the end of the day, it's really how can you word this in a nice bio, or how can you embody all this knowledge, and how can you put it in a resume? That's going to make a difference. Because I've read some bios and I've read some resumes that are full of accolades and like professional development and all of that. I'm like, this sounds like the most boring thing I've ever, like, I do not want to hang with this dude. It's that application that Christina and Whitney were saying, like how it's walking the talk. It's not only about how, yes, invest in yourself, but invest not in what the world is telling you necessarily, this is the right certification for you, but do your research. Invest in local personal development too, and professional development. I think the partnership has the leadership. It's just like a year program. One of my friends just graduated from that, and it was just awesome to see her bloom there. So yeah, it's really what's going to be a good fit for you, because also not all teachers are going to be your teachers. So just do your research.
Hey, Annie, can you drop some of your favorite books in the comments?
Yes. Here
Only
we go.
some, okay? Like 3.
Damn it.
Don't need to warm up or anything.
I would say, Annie, thanks for the pitch. The partnership, all the small business program we put out is programming that I organize. Since I live and breathe entrepreneurship daily, it's not just throwing a dart at the wall. It's literally selecting topics that I know are relevant. And then once a year, we host a small business success summit, which, I mean, Whitney was one of our speakers last year. And it's all relative topics. So this year it's coming out of COVID, basically, of how do you survive? How do you pivot? How do you do all those things you need to do? And that summit came out of a labor of love, because as a seasoned business, there's nowhere for me to go every year and invest one day of myself into the guts of a small business. And so that was something I was really passionate about getting off the ground. And then specific to my industry, there's an International Baking Expo. It happens every 3 years. So I take my 3 managers, we go out and I invest in them and myself for 4 days. We all attend different classes for different roles. It is a huge expense, but it keeps us on top of our industry and leaders and knowing what's happening. I think professionally too, if you're a younger professional, the YP groups are great. I learned so much. I was part of the Ankeny Young Professionals. I don't even want to admit this. I helped start that group because it's been around long enough. About 15 years ago, we were just not desperate, but really hungry for that professional training. As a young professional, like, are we doing things right? What's changing? You know, how do we greet people? Like, nobody trains you on these basic things. What side does your name tag go on? You know, nobody trained you on that coming out of college. And so I found that so useful. And we were kind of talking about this right before, but 15 years later, I'm still friends with this group. And I think the biggest thing I formed out of that group is ask for feedback. That's the quickest way that you can professionally develop, is being able to accept positive criticism. That's going to help you in the long run. But you'll also get whiplash if you say, hey, 10 people review this and give you your feedback. You're going to have whiplash trying to listen to all of them. So select 2 to 3 people, get feedback. You usually hear a common theme and adjust as you need to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to echo and try not to be redundant. Investing in coaching for myself has been it. And I know that I like a really in-depth experience, and I like it to be very specific. So I've had both a one-on-one coach. I've been in some really in-depth group coaching, but for me, working on changing myself or acknowledging the parts of myself that are both make me a really, really strong person, but the flip side of that is what's going to take me down. Really getting clear on that and figuring out how that works for me. And then when it's not working for me, figuring out how to help myself out of that space. That has changed my business immeasurably. So a lot of business people are like, where do I go to find out about, I mean, the question I get all the time is, where do I go to find out about how to post on social media? And I'm like, well, anybody can press post. That's not actually difficult. What you need to know is why you're not posting on social media. What is your programming that's telling you you are not worthy of showing up in this space? So like that, when people come to me and we have that conversation, I'm like, I can tell you, I can give you a list of what to post, but if you don't know why, your why is going to span your entire life. So we got to figure that out first. So that's really the biggest thing that I talk with people. And when I seek out personal things, it's how do I make myself better? Because me being better, my businesses are going to be incredible. And the best thing I've done this year is I hired a CFO for me. Yes, because I am not great with my money. I'm good at making it. I didn't know where to put it. And I needed somebody to help me with all of my finances. And I found that person, and she will probably be with me for the rest of my life.
That's such a game changer. And I'm going to echo what Whitney said. It's like mindset is what drives your business. I think about this in a sense of, if your mindset is not in the right place, you will probably not make the most out of the resources that you're paying for. I have wasted money on coaching, not because the coaching was not effective, but because I was not in the right mindset to implement the things that I was learning. And maybe years pass and then, oh, finally my money is like, I can implement this knowledge, but really where your mindset's at is what's going to make a difference with moving the needle of your business and your life.
Okay, so one last question. We've talked about, so Annie, you've shared that you haven't had any trolls, which is incredible, but let's say the small business owners on this call, they post something and someone comes at them about a disagreement maybe. How do you handle a healthy disagreement or healthy tension? And then also, how do you know when to just say, you know what, this is not worth my time or my energy, and I'm just not going to deal with it?
Take it offline. Anyone that's willing to have a discussion with you offline is genuine. The other ones are exactly trolls looking to troll. So if there's an issue, we usually say we'll be sending you a private message to follow up with you, so that we can correct. I mean, we want to learn. If a mistake happened, please tell a business. We need to learn. I don't want to make that mistake 100 more times, but that's how you'll know if they're trolling or if they actually want to have a conversation to get something fixed. Just take it offline. Do not engage with people online. It's the worst thing you can do.
I would say that the only way is that I would engage on, let's say, a comments conversation would be if it's a teachable moment, and I, on the other hand, would have taken it offline first, or it really depends on circumstances. I think that it also depends on the personality of your brand and your personality, but I do agree that there is very growth that happens in that public of a setting, because then it becomes a battle of the ego. And you're not there to learn. You then start making a point or proving your point, and then there's no growth either for you or for the other person. So yeah, sending a private message, and unless it's kind of like a very public question and it's a very specific question, then you can answer it like, hey, here are my sources for the thing that I'm saying. Let me know if you have any questions. You can DM me. But always showing up with an open mind and letting people know that you're open to a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I had an experience recently. I did a post about the fact that I missed my flight. Like, just straight up showed at the airport 2 hours after it was even. And I was like, probably not the most adult moment I've had in my life. But I'm working on grace. I'm like, these things. And I took a really awesome airport selfie. And so I was like, I'm going to make this a moment online. So I shared about my journey and how I'm reacting to having missed my flight and da-da-da-da. And then, this beautiful conversation starts happening around this topic my feed, and I love it when that happens. People are getting into it. And then my old boss, so I know this man, comments and he's like, Whitney, you should probably get a watch and maybe like a calendar. And, you know, I bet your clients don't like that you don't pay attention to deadlines and da 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 da. And like the part about my clients, I was like, oh no, you didn't. So I knew, you know, I know that this man probably will never check back on that post. Like I knew that I was not writing to him. But I did know that this post was getting a lot of attention, and I didn't want somebody to think that that was a real thing, that in some world that my clients don't get the attention and that I don't show up on time, because I'm a very punctual person, except that
You are.
light. So I basically responded to everyone else who was watching and just said, I assumed good intent. As best to my ability, I assumed good intent, and I said, hey, here, you know, and I just said, like, you know, this was a time zone mess up. I have a beautiful calendar and an admin and a lot of alarms on my phone, you know, and I tried not to make excuses, but just, I wanted anybody who was a potential client to read that and say, to be on my side. And so I really didn't even respond to him. I just responded so that anybody reading that would hear my voice.
Love it. So as we get close to the end, I would love to give each of you some time to kind of share what you are doing for your business and how everyone on here can support you, whether that is online or sharing a post or visiting the shop for your 8-year anniversary, or just what ways can we support your businesses?
Christina, you want to go?
Sure. So if you're out and about, come see us today. Of course, we miss people in the shop. It's hard to continue to do business when a lot of our business right now is events and weddings, which just are not happening. So the more Des Moines can surround us and support us right now, we've always given back. And so we hope that people can give back to us in our time of need right now. The other thing I'll just put out there is that not just my business, these ladies know I support the baking industry as a whole. So it's not just creme herding. If you're going to buy a birthday cake, please consider buying from a local business, not a large big box retailer. These bakers are just desperate to backfill the weddings and events they've lost. But also just things like, instead of buying shampoo at the store, like buy it from your hairdresser right now, like any of those small things. Instead of buying, you know, your coffee at the big box store, can you come to Zanzibar next door? Or, you know, anybody local, like those small things. Open your cupboard today, think through your routine, and how can you just add in one small business a day back into your routine, because they're so desperate for it. That's my plea. Please support your small businesses.
Ways that you can engage with me. I own Ivory House Photography, and then I also do coaching around how to show up on social, and I'm just starting to do Enneagram coaching, which if you don't know that word, Annie will spell it for you right now. And it's like my favorite thing in the entire world, which is crazy because I love a lot of things. But you can reach out to me. I think Sierra sending emails, if any of those things sound exciting to you. I mean, photography was my business baby in Des Moines. I still do it all of the time. I focus on professionals and business owners who need to have a stellar headshot and social media content. And we talk a lot about how visually showing up is sometimes the biggest battle for people. So I'm right there with you to help people get through that. And then, you know, putting fingers to the keyboard and pressing post. I'm also there for that.
And with me, yes, all the things Enneagram. Whitney and I do share that passion. And coaching, if you're in need of clarity, which is one of the things that I like to say I support people with the most, it can be in the shape of one session, one-on-one session. If there's one little thing that you need some clarity on and you want an external perspective, if there's a larger project in your life, whether it's personal or professional, that you would like some company in, because really that's what coaches do. We shine a light and we walk with you. And if you want, or if you own a business or you're part of a corporate world where there's a need for having honest, vulnerable conversations and you want to bring that conversation to the table, I also do public speaking and group corporate coaching.
Okay, thank you so much. Everyone who attended today, I will be emailing with contact information for all three of these ladies. And as always, shop local. It's great. Okay. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. I hope all of you have a wonderful day.